Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, or whenever you happen to be listening to this. Welcome to the Film Realist Podcast, the film and TV podcast from a complete nobody. That is hopefully for somebody. My name is Keanu Reeves, and welcome to episode 169. On this week's episode, I will be reviewing Good Fortune, the comedy written and directed by Aziz Ansari, starring Sandra Oh, Seth Rogen, Keke Palmer, and of course, Keanu Reeves. As this is a film feature review, there will be a non-spoiler section as well as a spoiler section. So if you haven't had a chance yet to see the movie, there's no need to worry. There is a part of the review for you. And then to round out the rest of the episode, I will be responding to listener mail and comments based on question of the week. Let's get heavenly and jump into Good Fortune.
You guided someone? Gabriel, you're not supposed to talk to people or be visible.
I know that.
Then why did you do this?
He was a lost soul. I tried to show him that wealth wouldn't solve all his problems.
And?
It seems to have solved most of his problems.
One of the aspects of this movie that I really appreciate is that it takes that grass is greener mentality, but it applies it to multiple characters. From Gabriel's point of view as sort of the middling angel wanting to do more, which we see, all this stuff is in the trailers. And then Aziz Ansari's character, who is somebody who is just struggling to get by, looking for success, but not finding it, then finding somebody who's found success so easily and thinking things would be so much easier based on where he's from. And the separation of wealth in North America is becoming larger and larger pretty much by the day. And it's really interesting to see the different perspectives on what that means for your life and how it's going to be reflective in your relationships. And the movie really does feel reminiscent of something like It's a Wonderful Life, getting this, what feels like ground level approach to a substantial thing we're used to with that body swapping idea, but it makes it much more personal because we get to see the journeys of both of those characters, and they really get to see what it is like living in another person's shoes. On top of that, we get Keanu Reeves, who is just so funny in this movie. The way that the comedy plays with who Gabriel is so entertaining. And what I appreciate more than anything about it is he gets to be not comical in a way where he's an idiot. It is this oblivious ignorance to what it means to be human, yet he's still striving for these grander goals in life. It's not an unfamiliar territory to address the idea of this guardian angel, oh, they'll fix all your problems. And what I like so much about the portrayal of anybody celestial in this is the middling jobs that everybody would have. There is the S-tier gigs where you are helping the lost souls find their places in life. And then you're having people who do things like what we see from Gabriel, which is he helps people with texting and driving. And getting this just set in this comedic backdrop with the whole movie just warms your heart, because this movie is not a grand look at all of these problems. It is that simplicity of the body swap, and you need to find compelling reasons to care about all the characters. For the flip to be the perspective of Seth Rogen makes this movie really entertaining. You get two comedy legends, Canadian comedy legends, but on top of that, we do get to have a substantial amount of story with Keke Palmer, and I appreciate that this movie gives us more than the two guys' perspectives, because it would be very easy for it just to do that. But on top of that, you need somebody like Keke Palmer and her relationship with Aziz's character to really be the touchstone for what is the purpose of pushing forward when things are not going your way. It is very contrite for somebody to do these things on their own, but to have somebody who shows you that they are that beacon of light for hope, that it is not just, I found something easy and this is going to make my life better. Lives and relationships are so much more complex than they seem, even when you are just getting surface level information from other people. There are experiences and challenges you are unaware of. That's why it is so important to be aware of other people's struggles and what they're going through. And this movie being a 2-hour comedy gives you that It's so fun just to see these characters bounce off of each other. The script needs to be very tight for this movie to work, and each of our main three leads' evolution and the way that this three-pack goes across a journey of self-discovery with all three of them is really, really fun, and I appreciate that. I have this conversation with so many people. I had it over Thanksgiving about this idea of theatrical going experiences, and I really do feel like streaming has ruined this for so many people, where I get this question a lot. If you're a diehard film goer, I'm sure you've heard it too, which is, is it justified? Should I see this in theaters? People go to theaters now, general audiences, for spectacle. That is not to be demeaning of spectacle. I love spectacle. Look through the history of Film Realist podcast episodes. It's usually of big movies. Why? Because those usually get more listens. But the theatrical going experience used to be just as intimate as going to see a play when you watched a much smaller movie that had a clear vision and focus on something that it was trying to express, a methodology or an opinion. You can get that in documentaries as well, but just expecting this to be on streaming for it to be something substantially disposable has ruined the expectation of general moviegoers, and I really hate that that's the case. I love when I go to see a smaller movie and it is something where I'm glad that this is on the big screen, that you get these lower budget movies that are made succinctly with a purpose in mind. Streaming, more than anything, has ruined not theatrical going films, but feature-length movies. They are 9 times out of 10 very low effort in terms of the creative expectation of the audience. You can look up a multiple reasons why, specifically something like Netflix, where, and that's not just Netflix, other streamers have been part of this problem as well, that they expect the audience to not really be paying attention. And the blockbusters that we get on streaming would not make any money as theatrical going experiences, because usually the cinematography is not what you would expect from a theatrical going movie, and they're usually an incoherent mess. These movies would get lost on streaming. Roofman I have seen, as well as Good Fortune, which obviously I'm talking about right now. Those movies get lost in a haystack of mostly garbage. Yes, I have every streaming platform, and I try to stay up to date on the prestige stuff and the most popular things that people are talking about. Little inside, next week's episode is going to be focusing on Gen V Season 2. But smaller movies that are not full of talent who is going to be in your face, you have to see this movie, that are all over your TikTok algorithm or Instagram Reels or YouTube Shorts. I'm tired of those movies, because usually when you have somebody who doesn't have a clue as to what they're selling, or you are trying to make a 4-quadrant movie that doesn't say anything, those movies are completely unremarkable. Tron Ares didn't know what it wanted to be, and the audience it was looking for wasn't there for it for many reasons. One of those being 15 years of ignoring the sequel that reignited and created an entirely new fandom for that movie. Is Good Fortune going to blow your mind? Absolutely not. But I don't need every single movie to give me experience that people seem to expect from something like Avatar, Fire and Ash, which is coming out in a couple months, or one of the Marvel movies, or one of the DC movies, or whatever Paramount makes, Top Gun Maverick as an example, or Mission Impossible Final Reckoning, which I did review. And yes, that movie has a spectacle, but the reason that movie doesn't work is because the script is a mess. This movie's script is so specific and has to work because our actors have to have snappy dialogue, and you need to care about each and every one of them. If you don't, the morality that the film is trying to express doesn't work. And I'm really glad that it does. We get to see a vast array of wage disparity in Los Angeles, as well as the struggle of the gig economy, which is becoming more and more prevalent, as well as the use of these apps and places like Amazon, Uber Eats, Skip the Dishes. I'm sure I'm missing other ones. Quite frankly, I don't use them because the financial guarantee for the workers is not there. They're not livable wages. They're not paid benefits. And you have people who have to work multiple jobs just to make ends meet. I live in Canada where the federal minimum wage is supposed to be somewhat livable. That's not the case in the United States with a lot of jobs, which is absolutely ridiculous. It's unfortunate that this continually has to be a plot point in films because it doesn't change. I understand that people probably didn't expect this episode to be necessarily political, but here we are. I really enjoyed this movie. I think the chemistry is fantastic. It's a movie that I'm going to suggest to people to see because it has something to say. It's not in your face going, this is how we feel and you have to follow us and believe the same thing. It is a movie about shared perspective. And when you are looking after something with good intentions and expecting good fortune for those around you, it's probably a good mentality to have. There's more I can say about this in spoilers, so let's stop the non-spoiler review here and let's jump into full-blown spoilers.
I did not know you were struggling to the point that you needed divine intervention. But you gotta switch back, man. Give me my life back.
So what, I just go back to living in my car?
You lived in your car?
Yes, Jeff, I did. Why do you think an angel got involved? Because I had too many roommates?
Okay, that's bad. And I acknowledge that. So here's what I'm gonna do. If you switch back right now, I'm gonna give you $200,000.
You spent more than that on one of your watches.
One of the great first things the movie does is sets up Gabriel, Keanu Reeves' Angel, as somebody who's just sort of similar to Arj, who is Aziz Ansari's character. They're just sort of middling through life, doing what they need to, but not really feeling fulfilled. And to give us a mirror on both of those characters where they are experiencing very similar things sets up their relationship as being one that's really compelling because they're going to go on the same sort of journey as each other, which is fun to have. You expect the celestial agents in the movie to be grand, all-knowing, and to some degree they are. But what I like about Gabriel's Angel, played by Keanu Reeves, is his ignorance on what it means for humanity are so funny given his experience later on after he screws up trying to help a lost soul, which is not something he's supposed to be doing. He experiences being human along with Jeff, Seth Rogen's character, after the flip has happened, and he's aware of the circumstances of Gabriel intervening into Arj's life. And the back and forth has to work with all three of those characters, and the setup with Jeff, when Arj winds up being his delivery guy and then does a task for him, ultimately winding up and being his assistant, saying they're going to test this out, is the setup for Jeff as this tech bro isn't somebody who's necessarily likable. And what I like about that is it allows for that character's transition to be much more believable than, well, he's a tech bro with a heart of gold. Because if you start a character where we already like them, there's nowhere for them to go. When we get both characters to experience each other's lives, it allows for that shared perspective to be much more meaningful at the end. One of my favorite twists of the movie is they come to an agreement that Arj is going to live Jeff's life for a couple more days and that Jeff challenges himself that he can do what Arj has been doing, and they get to really live in each other's shoes. Jeff sees the struggle that Arj had, not really understanding how tough it is for somebody who did not have the steps that he had, the privilege that he had in growing up, allowing him to grow and build his career. What I like most about what leads to the main conflict at the end of the movie is because Gabriel is busy with Jeff trying to fix everything, he is not in the car as the driving and texting Angel, resulting in Arj going into a coma, which causes a delay in the inevitable switch that they're going to have. This causes Jeff, who is through the first 3 days just experiencing this and annoyed with it, but not really having to live it as his own life. The more he experiences this, he really understands how people at the top of the pyramid are truly taking advantage of everybody who's been given everything, and that people who are working their butts off are not given the same opportunities. And that's really important, as well as Keke Palmer's character, who forms an entirely different relationship with Aziz Ansari's character. They, before the switch, work in the same hardware store, and she's trying to unionize the workers, something that's been trying to happen a lot with places like Amazon, as well as other companies. And his perspective when she's trying to do it when they work together is one of why, and that even elevates further when he has all of the things that Jeff had, that this isn't going to work out. Why don't you just try to do something else? And that the failure of that is what leads her to believe that she needs to continue to try, because if she doesn't, then there's nothing to strive and work for. And I will give the movie credit, because one thing that some films would not want to do, and I credit something like Smashing Machine for doing this earlier, which is we're allowed to see, as well as the other main characters, we get to see Arj's flaws as somebody who finally has success. Even though it's something he didn't work for, he feels safe in that experience, and it affects his relationship with Keke Palmer negatively. And then coming out of the coma, still not wanting to switch because he sees his previous life as a waste and not meaningful and not one worth living. And it is in him creating a lie to continue to stay in this, saying he's forgotten who Jeff and Gabriel are, that we get to see Gabriel experience humanity and his love for chicken nuggets and milkshakes, and Jeff continually exploring that this is not as easy as he thought it was. And it's only when we get to see these characters truly come to conflict, and when Arj is back on the ground level of where he was prior to switching with Jeff, that he builds a truly meaningful connection with Keke Palmer's character and sees what she's doing, in the heart of what she's doing is something he wants to strive for as well. That yes, the struggle is hard and it's really difficult when you're failing to make ends meet, but the life he wanted for himself didn't even include his own family, because living as Jeff did not include his own dad. And one of the things he bought for his dad was a stained t-shirt, and his dad continually wore it because it was a gift from him, respecting how hard he probably knew it was to accompany that. This is not to say I think the movie over magnifies how great it is to be somebody who's struggling, but to show that money is not everything. It's ironic living in Canada, because there is a Scotiabank commercial that I'm sure people are familiar with, and the whole concept is you're richer than you think. And this movie focuses on that as well. This concept of money doesn't necessarily fill a hole that you feel that you might have in your life. That it's something that probably is a deficit of something else. And I'm glad to see in a movie that was not an extravagantly extravagantly expensive film, the budget was $30 million, and that intimacy is something that really does work for the movie. Each character is given meaningful time to explore. Their journeys are ones you want to be on with them. And there's such a great warmth in realizing that Arj has a new lease on life when he wants to be himself. He no longer wants to be Jeff. And you're happy for everybody to be back where they are. And Jeff, being who he is now, understands how hard it is for other people and that we shouldn't be taking advantage. And it would be such a great thing for all these tech billionaires to maybe be aware of, but there's no way they're seeing this movie. Maybe their assistant's assistant is, but it's unlikely that the people at the very top would appreciate something like this. But the only way for this message to be put out into the world is to have it said, to have it made in a movie like this, and I'm so glad that it was. If you saw Good Fortune, let me know in the comments what you thought of it. Are you somebody like me who is crusading for smaller movies to be successful in the theaters? Let me know in the comments. I look forward to reading them. Now let's jump into listener mail and question of the week responses.
Can I ask you a question? Just fun?
There's something I've been meaning to ask you.
I ask the questions, you answer the questions.
Why do you ask questions to which you already know the answers?
Did that count as a question?
Yes.
Damn it.
Last week's question of the week was, what is your favorite Keanu Reeves movie? Legacy Odin writes in on Peacemaker Season 2 review, jumping to the finale because character limit. I think I have nuanced reasons for being slightly disappointed with the finale. When I watched it, but sleeping on it, I recognized the creative intent behind it. This isn't from me saying any hype posts, since I try not to engage with those. I just didn't feel the finale felt consistent with the tangible plot threads preceding it. The emotional character threads are there and are fantastic, but overall the narrative is so scattered. Legacy, I think that's a really great point and kind of illustrates why it didn't necessarily work for me, and I appreciate you watching the show and letting me know what you think about it. Scotty Cameron writes in, it's none other than the brilliant remake of The Day the Earth Stood Still. That movie showed all of Keanu's range as an actor and was the most enlightened movie I'd ever seen. My brain enters recovery mode every time I watch it. I'm just kidding, it's John Wick. The action is spectacular and it uses Keanu Reeves' talent appropriately. I will shout out Matrix since it paved the way for Keanu to earn roles like John Wick. Scotty, I'm assuming you say John Wick 1, which is fascinating because I really think, having ranked them, it's debatable as to which one is the best. I think it's not the first one, but I think that's really interesting. Lastly, happy birthday, Kyle. Now you're 1 year older. Scotty, thank you so much. I did have a great birthday. Thank you to everybody who reached out on social media and saw that video that was put together that I was very surprised existed because I definitely wasn't expecting to see anything like that, which was amazing. Thank you so much. Jermaine Jones, I give you the first line. I am an FBI agent. Point Break was one of my fave movies growing up. It's tied with The Matrix, and also The Matrix Part 2 has one of the top 5 car chase scenes in cinema history. I think you're definitely right, Jermaine. It's just unfortunate that most of the Matrix sequels fall off a cliff movie by movie. Max Mirror 72060 says The Matrix. Chauncey Nodin 5365, Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, and all the John Wick movies. Chauncey, I'm super impressed that yours is Bogus Journey and not Excellent Adventure. That's super funny. And connects to our next comment, Firebrand 18. It's either Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, Constantine, or The Matrix. Very interested to see Constantine in here, but you're not the only one. Jonathan 606, irony here, Constantine or Speed. And then, beloved friend of the show, Dylan Pollock writes in, honestly, tough to pick one. Keanu Reeves movies, I have a list, my favorite in no order, Bill and Ted 1 and 2, The Replacements, The Matrix, and Speed. Honorable mention to The Devil's Advocate. Damn, Keanu's been in a lot of good movies. Completely agree with that. And then W. Luhu CA, Speed! I'm shocked that most of the movies were covered. Nobody said The Lake House or his small appearance in Anyone But You. I love Keanu Reeves. He's absolutely amazing, and I'm glad he's had a very wide range of comedy and action movies. He's definitely an icon, and probably some of pop culture's favorite Canadian actor of all time. It gets forgotten a lot that he's Canadian, but he is Canadian. Moving on to this week's question of the week, which is connected to next week's review, which is that of Gen V Season 2. If you're around little kids, if you've got cousins, children of your own, or you work with little children, a question you get asked frequently, with my own children, this is the case. If you could have a superpower, what would it be? I understand that a lot of people might go to a conventional thing, but I would be really impressed if you could give me a superpower you'd like that's more obscure. So not one of flight or super strength or teleportation, because if we're all being honest and you want to stop climate change, we should all have teleportation. So that's the question. What's an obscure superpower you wish you could have? To let me know, you can answer the question of the week by emailing the podcast, filmreelistspod@gmail.com, or you can comment below on YouTube and Spotify, or you can mention me on any of the social medias. Just make sure to include the hashtag QOTW. I want to shout out all the people who subscribed to the Film Realist YouTube channel over the past week. We are steadily climbing towards monetization, which would be absolutely amazing, and it would afford me the opportunities to do other things with the podcast. I'm going to announce here, because this is probably a great place to put this. If you haven't been checking out my work on Multiverse of Color and DC Studios podcast, Andy Babakt has had me on Multiverse of Color. I've written up a couple articles there, so you can read them over on Multiverse of Color. And I covered episodes 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 with the crew over at DC Studios podcast. And moving forward, I will be a full-fledged member of that podcast. So I'm really glad to be a part of that. Vanessa, Mike, and Andy are all amazing. So if you want to see episode by episode breakdowns of Peacemaker and you're a DCU fan, highly recommend checking those out. Thank you so much for listening. As I've said, next week's episode is Gen V Season 2. My name is Kyle Naranya, and I can't wait to see you next time.